Well, the Browns enjoyed a week off with their bye this past week. Couple results across the league on Sunday actually benefited Cleveland. And so with that being said, we're going to check out what a road to the playoffs would look like for Cleveland. Welcome into the Browns Report. I'm your host, Matthew Peterson. And it all kind of kickstarted by waking up this morning and seeing this tweet from Jake Trotter covering the Browns for ESPN. He said, despite not playing yesterday, the Browns' playoff odds went up to 20.7% chance to make the postseason and an 8.2% chance to win the division, according to ESPN FPI. One, I have no idea actually how they make these numbers up. I think they are completely pulling out of grass fairies' asses. But with that said, we might as well look at the playoff picture, because if there's a reason to get the playoff hopes up again, I'm all in. So big thing I'm looking at right now is you've got the Pats and the Chiefs up on the left ahead of everyone else, but also they have tiebreakers over the Browns. So not going to probably catch those teams if you're in a wild card race, because both those teams have tough teams right behind them in the Bills and the Chargers gunning for the top of the spot. And the other thing is, look at the Bengals, 7-5. It's a Bengals team the Browns beat the crap out of a couple of weeks ago. So if the Bengals can make the playoffs, why can't the Browns? We're going to go over the entire Browns schedule on today's video, along with the other three AFC North teams, and we'll peek at a possible contender in the wild card race, because I don't think the Chiefs and the Pats are going to make the Browns' life any easier in that department. But we'll kick things off by asking this question to you. Will the Browns make the playoffs? Type Y for yes, N for no. I've asked this question before. I've gotten a lot of no's recently, and I get it. But after seeing the Steelers beat the Ravens and the Chargers beat the Bengals, both things kind of benefiting the Browns, makes you wonder, maybe they can sneak in after a week off and get a little healthier, and they got a huge matchup with the Ravens this Sunday and a redemption. For the Browns to reach the playoffs, I think they need 10 wins. I think that's an absolute must, actually. Like 95% chance. I just don't see a 9-8 team getting in. And honestly, wouldn't be shocked if a 10-7 team misses the playoffs, because it's just that difficult in the AFC. The NFC, I think a below 500 49ers or Vikings team could squeak in, but the AFC is a lot tougher this year. The other thing that's not working well for the Browns is that they have a very tough schedule coming up. Every team they are playing is at least 500 or better. But the thing that's working for the Browns is the AFC North, as we saw this past Sunday, is extremely unpredictable. The Bengals lose at home to a kind of on and off Chargers team, and the Steelers, they beat the crap out of, well, not to beat the crap out of, but they beat the Ravens, and they held off Lamar Jackson down the end. They pulled off a nice comeback. But this is what the Browns' schedule looks like coming up. You got the Ravens at home this Sunday. You got to like your chances after seeing the Ravens last couple weeks look pretty lackluster. And sure, they beat the Browns 2 weeks ago when they would play on Sunday, but if the Browns played just half-ass football, they would have beat the Ravens, I think, in Baltimore. Then you got the Raiders on Saturday. I think the Raiders are one of the worst teams in the NFL. Have to take care of business there. Those two games need to be wins, in my opinion. Packers on the road on Christmas Day. That can be a loss. You can stomach that loss and not punt on the season. Got to beat the Steelers on the road. Steelers are not good. They just find ways to, be Mike Tomlin's Steelers and pull out wins. And then you get the Bengals at home. Probably a must win. I think if the Browns want to make the playoffs, they need to go 4-1 in that stretch. I don't think they have to go 5-0, but 4-1 gets you to 10 wins, and that's probably an absolute must to make the playoffs. Now, speaking of the playoffs, I think the division is a lot easier of a route than the wild card route is, believe it or not, to make the playoffs, because the AFC North kind of keeps turning on its head every single Sunday. It looks like it was the Browns to start, then the Ravens took over, then the Bengals took over. Now it's with the Ravens, but the Ravens have looked bad the last month. Their win against the Browns was not convincing. They have a bad loss to the Steelers. They blew that one in the fourth quarter. They blew it in Miami. Well, they didn't even blow it in Miami. They never played in Miami. And then you look at the wild card side of things, and if the Browns want to squeak in, they don't have the tiebreakers over the Patriots and the Chiefs, so that's not easy sledding. And then the other tiebreakers come down to record in the AFC, and with 7 losses at 10-7, the Browns won't have a great AFC record because they got losses against the Chiefs, the Chargers, the Patriots. So those are all out-of-division games. And that's why I think the best route for the Browns to make the playoffs is actually winning the division. As crazy as that sounds, it just seems the most feasible to me because you have 3 games coming up within the division. All 3 games are very winnable, okay? You could talk yourself into Browns off the bye against the Ravens. Ravens have looked bad lately. Yeah, I'll take it. You beat the Bengals once already. You destroyed them, really. You should have beat the Steelers. Well, you not should have beat the Steelers, but you had to win that game because the Steelers aren't that good of a football team. They're just the Mike Tomlin Steelers that refuse to quit and get a good speech once every 3 Sundays and somehow pull out a miracle win. But speaking of the AFC North, shout out your least favorite team down in the comment section. Who do you hate the most? Is it the Steelers, the Ravens, the Bungles? Pitbalcin. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make this the pinned comment. So scroll on down. If YouTube hits you with that ad break, respond with the team you hate the most in the North, and then come back and join the video. Let's break down the schedule for each and every single AFC North team going forward, starting with the Bengals. I'm looking at 49ers at home, and I'm thinking Joe Burrow just hurt his pinky, so could be a tough one. 49ers, they are not an easy out. At Denver, I don't like to speculate too far away just because so much can change week to week in the NFL. But at the Broncos, at Mile High, that won't be an easy win, okay? Then you got the Ravens, Chiefs, and Browns. Overall, I think in this 5-game stretch, the Bengals go 2-3, okay? This isn't me saying that they're going to win the Broncos and the Ravens game guaranteed, but just looking at this 5-game slate and what I've seen from Cincinnati so far, I think it's a 2-3 record out of the next 5. Most likely at the Broncos and then home against the Ravens because I think the 49ers are going to be hungry after a bad loss in Seattle last week. The Chiefs are rocking and rolling. And then at the Browns in the last week of the season, Cleveland will have a lot to play for at that point. So I think the Bengals go 2-3. On to the Ravens. Their next 5 games are not easy, by the way, and they have not looked good. At the Browns this Sunday, that's got to be a win for Cleveland, no doubt about it. Home against the Packers, then you go to Cincinnati, then you play a soft candy but good, fast Rams team, and then you wrap up the season with your biggest rival in the Steelers. I think the Ravens go 3-2 in the stretch. You can kind of move the wins and losses around, but just based on, like the Bengals, what I've seen the last month and how the Ravens have played, I'm not going to swear to these games and these losses, but I think 3-2 over the next 5 for Baltimore seems pretty feasible. You can't ask the Ravens to go 0-5. You're just not going to get that. I think they can beat the Rams. The Rams are a soft team. They don't like to play physical. The Ravens do. I think they can beat the Packers after getting a bad loss against the Browns in their eyes. And then on the road in Cincy, and then you wrap it up by beating your biggest rival, the Pittsburgh Steelers. And you give Big Ben Roethlisberger a loss in his final game, most likely in the NFL. I think everyone in the AFC North can get behind that. Before we get to the Steelers schedule, we got a great deal going on with our friends at BetUS. Our sportsbook partner hooks you up with a 125% deposit bonus, and all you got to do is go to chatsports.com/bet. Use the promo code right there, Browns125. Plug that puppy in. Boom, $100 cash equals $225 to play with. You're rolling in the dough. Make some money. Whether or not you want to bet on the Browns, that's up to you. I post my picks every single week. I'm red hot. And by red hot, that means I went 3-2 last Sunday. But I'm in the green, so I'll take it. Moving on to the Steelers schedule. I don't think my biggest harping points this entire season have been the Steelers aren't good and the Raiders aren't good. Railers, big L. So the Steelers schedule looks like this. At the Vikings, I think Minnesota, coming off that loss to Detroit, is going to be hungry for a win. Who wants it more? I think Minnesota does. Then you get the Titans at home. You go to KC, and you wrap it up with 2 division games. It doesn't feel right to say this, but I think the Steelers go 1-4. I think they get a lone win against the Titans at home. I do think the Vikings rebound, and Mike Zimmer kind of keeps his job talk alive by winning at home against Pittsburgh. I just can't picture a way the Steelers go into KC and beat the Chiefs, but any given Sunday. And then they wrap up with a Browns team that needs to win more and a Ravens team that wants to give Ben Roethlisberger a loss on his final game in his career. Now, maybe the Mike Tomlin Steelers find a way to get above 500. Tomlin's unfortunately never gone below 500, but it would be a little poetic for the rest of the AFC North that in Big Ben Roethlisberger's final season in Pittsburgh, they dip just below 500. So here's my projected standings when you put all those wins and losses in. After the next 5 weeks, I've got the Ravens still winning the division at 11-6. They're currently 8-4, so you can see where everyone is now on the right versus what I predict they'll be. The Browns at 10-7, that gets them into the playoffs. You just got to go 3-3 or 3-2, 4-1, 4-1. Math's hard. You got to go 4-1. That's not easy. Okay, we know that. The Bengals 7-5, they kind of fall apart, but they get a nice building piece going forward. And then the Steelers, I just find them getting one win the rest of the way. So for the Browns, that gets them into the playoffs. How feasible is it? 4-1, based on how this team has looked the last month and a half, not very feasible. But it is the NFL. You see this every single year. A team gets hot at the right time. The only question is, what team will that be? We're going to look at the other side of things. We'll talk about the wild card race in just a second. But the Browns and the Ravens play this Sunday, and let's bury them, okay? I'm talking 6 feet deep, like stepbrothers, but better bury them, because I don't want Dale Doback coming out of the grave. Help us destroy the Ravens in the sub-count, because the Ravens run down like 1,000 behind. Let's get 1,000 more on them. Let's put up 90 on Sunday. Bury the Ravens. Subscribe today if you have not already. On to the wild card side of things, I mentioned earlier, the Chiefs and the Patriots are just out of reach. They have more wins. They have the tiebreaker. I don't see a way the Browns can get into the playoffs and the wild card side of things because they don't have the tiebreaker of those two teams, which leaves kind of one team left in my opinion, and that's the Colts. That's the biggest obstacle in my opinion because the other two teams in the Chiefs and the Patriots are just not realistic. You're not passing them. So if you want to look at the Colts' upcoming schedule, it looks like this. They get a very late bye, week 14, and then they get what I think looks like a 2-2 record the rest of the way. You can move the wins and losses around. We'll see how the Patriots look on Monday night tonight, but then they go to Arizona. Then you wrap up the season with Raiders and then at the Jaguars. To me, that looks like 2-2, and the Colts right now, 2-2, that would get them into the playoffs. So with all this being said and all the number crunching, it's a long shot. 4-1 is the most difficult thing you need out of this group. I think asking the Ravens to go 3-2 is not too difficult. Asking the Bengals to go 2-3 is not unfeasible. Asking the Colts to maybe kind of fall off a little bit, not too much to ask. But for the Browns to go 4-1, that's the biggest ask in this group right here. But you never know, it's the NFL. So before we wrap up today's video, shout out your city. Let me know where you're watching, whether you're back in Ohio or maybe you're outside of Ohio or even outside the U.S. Shout out your city in the comments section below. Love seeing Browns fans all across the country and all across the world. So let me know where you're watching today's video at.